Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind English podcast, where we make learning English simple, fun, and effective. I am your host, Tommy Chio, and today we are talking about a challenge that many of you might be facing: how to practice and be fluent in speaking English without a partner. Whether you are just starting out or trying to improve your fluency, this episode is for you.
That is right, Tommy. Hi everyone, I am Anna, your co-host today. You know, one of the biggest struggles English learners talk about is finding someone to practice with. It can feel lonely or even frustrating, but don't worry, we are here to show you that you don't actually need a partner to improve your English exactly.
In fact, practicing alone has its own set of benefits. We are going to share practical tips, tools, and techniques to help you build confidence, improve your skills, and have fun while learning, so stick around till the end, you don't want to miss this.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you are new here. And make sure to check out our playlist for more episodes like this. Alright, Tommy. Are you ready to get started?
Absolutely, Anna. Let's talk about why practicing English alone is not only possible but also super effective. Let's get started. Alright, let's talk about why practicing English alone is so important. A lot of people think that without a partner is impossible to make progress, but that is just not true. In fact, practicing alone can give you more control over your learning. All too often people spend all of their time studying grammar and memorizing lists of words, instead of actually going out there and putting what they've learned into practice. Anyone who's taken the plunge and moved away from home to study English, or moved abroad to work or travel, will tell you just how quickly their English skills improve. While studying the written language is still hugely important, especially for improving your grammar and building your vocabulary, the most effective learning still happens face-to-face. When you're surrounded by people who don't speak your native language, you have no choice but to overcome your fears, your fear of making mistakes, of being shy, of sounding foolish. All things that stand in the way of your language learning. Being forced to speak the language helps you to overcome those fears, to realize that English speakers don't care if you make mistakes, and to reach out and build your language skills in a very real way. Speaking and listening to other people in English helps to boost the faith you have in your abilities and banish the doubts that are inside your head. So it's a confidence booster. But there are many more ways in which speaking the language can improve your English skills, fast. How to practice speaking English by yourself. Embrace the inner dialogue. Talk to yourself. This might sound odd, but it's incredibly effective. Describe your day, narrate your actions, or discuss a topic that interests you. Like me, when I started practicing English, I talked to myself in the shower. I imagine I'm winning imaginary arguments or that I'm answering interview questions for jobs I haven't applied for. Every once in a while, I'm telling Oprah about the fantastic book I never wrote. I like to think it's not weird, it's just my mind wandering. Right? Occasionally, I have these conversations in Thailand, the language I'm learning. In that case, I like to believe that it's not only not weird, but that the inner dialogue is actually helpful. That I'm practicing Thai and getting better at it. In this article, I'll explain whether that's true. Can you really learn English by talking to yourself? I'll present some research on the role of talking to yourself in language learning, and show that it really can be beneficial. Then I'll give some advice on different ways that independent English learners can do it effectively. Imagine conversations. Practice hypothetical conversations with friends, family, colleagues, or even fictional characters.
The reason why learn English by talking to yourself? But first, why think about self-talk anyway? Why not just be a normal person and keep conversations in social situations with other people? There are a few reasons that talking to yourself is a potentially useful exercise. It's convenient. You can speak to yourself anywhere, in the shower, while you're doing the dishes, on the bus, if you don't mind strange looks. Basically anywhere you have a minute to yourself. It's flexible. You can talk about anything you want with anyone you want. You can even tell Oprah about a book you never wrote. It's free. You can do it without the cost of expensive schools or teachers. You can do it without feeling embarrassed. Well, as long as you're not talking out loud in a public place close to other people. There's no fear. Lots of people have a fear of speaking English. But you won't be afraid to speak to yourself in your head.
Okay, Anna, as you mention about fear of speaking English, how to overcome your fear of speaking English? It is important to practice English. Don't let your fear of speaking English keep you from becoming fluent. Okay, use these tips to overcome the discomfort and learn to speak confidently. I currently live in Thailand and am learning Thai. The great majority of the conversations I have are colored with some kind of anxiety. Because I'm still learning to speak the language. Did I say that right? What was that word again? Do I sound stupid? Because we feel a bit stupid when we're speaking another language, don't we? I often joke that I drop roughly 30 IQ points in Thai and that I lose about half of my personality. Speaking in another language comes with a lot of awkwardness, self-doubt, and even fear. But, if you really want to learn, you're going to have to overcome your fear of speaking English. In this article, I want to give you some tips on how to do that. Choose speaking activities that provoke less fear. There are lots of speaking activities you can do that don't require another person, such as shadowing or even just talking to yourself. These allow you to practice speaking without having to do it with a real person. I've previously given a big list of activities to improve your English speaking if you don't have anyone to practice with. Start with some of these to improve your speaking confidence. Once you're a bit more comfortable, you'll feel less awkward when you're having conversations with others. Start online. A less stressful way to start conversing in English is by doing it through text. If you're writing, you get a bit more time to think about what you want to say. And maybe even to use Google Translate if you need to. So start online. You can use online language learning forums, chat rooms, or message boards. You can even start conversations through social media. These options give you a bit more time and help you practice the rhythm of a conversation without the fear that comes with actually speaking.
Thanks, Tommy. You may join a community. Another effective way to overcome your fear of speaking is to join a community of language learners who are just like you. These communities can be really supportive and can help remove some of your anxiety around speaking English. There are a number of great communities for English learners, including Facebook groups, Discord servers, and WhatsApp groups. Our favorite is, of course, the Leonardo English community. We've got a small but growing and engaged group of people on there. And I encourage you to check it out. Choose comfortable language partners. People you know, your friends and relatives, may be less intimidating than strangers. Find partners that you know to help you feel less tense. Finding a language exchange partner may also be a good option. In a language exchange, you might speak in English for 30 minutes and then switch roles and speak in your native language for 30 minutes. The beauty of this is that both people are the learner and feel the discomfort that comes with learning another language. And both people get to feel the comfort that comes with speaking one's own language. Being able to see your partner struggle and make mistakes may help you overcome your own fear of making mistakes. Check out our article on how to find a conversation partner in English for ideas on finding a language exchange partner.
Sometimes we're afraid to speak in another language because we know we're not very good at it. So one way to overcome your fear of speaking English is to improve your skills. Of course, improving your speaking skills is important, but so are the others: listening, reading, and writing. According to Krashen's input hypothesis, listening to English and reading it are two of the best ways to improve your general English level. He argues that these provide the comprehensible input that is essential for you to acquire a language. There's actually quite a bit of research on this. It's clear, for example, that listening to podcasts can help you speak English better. So by working your English skills in other ways, you'll improve your overall English level and eventually feel more comfortable speaking in English.
That is right, Tommy. When you practice speaking English, you should embrace your mistakes and forget perfection. Mistakes are an absolutely critical part of learning. The willingness to make mistakes is one of the superpowers of effective language learners. If you're not making mistakes, you're not growing. Changing your mindset or your attitude is difficult, but it might go a really long way toward overcoming your fear of speaking in English. If you learn to value the mistakes you're making and see them as a part of your English learning journey, you might not be so afraid to make them in the first place.
What if you're already in the conversation and you're feeling really uncomfortable? Practice relaxing. There are several effective skills you can practice and use to reduce agitation, such as taking deep breaths. Breathing deeply is a great way to reduce the physical sensations that come with fear, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, etc. Use positive self-talk. Remind yourself that you really can have a good conversation in English and that it's fine if you're not perfect. Talk yourself up. Challenge your negative thoughts. You don't have to believe everything you think. While you might worry that something you said was embarrassing, you can challenge that thought and remind yourself that it probably wasn't a big deal and everyone makes mistakes.
And Tommy, a smile can make you feel relaxed, which shows that our behavior can affect how we feel. There is actually quite a bit of evidence to show that our behavior can affect how we feel. One famous study in psychology assigned participants to two groups. In one, they were asked to hold a pencil between their teeth, causing them to smile. In the other, participants were asked to hold a pencil between their upper lip and their nose, causing them to frown. The researchers found that participants in the first group rated cartoons as funnier, indicating that smiling changed how they felt.
Focus on one-to-one conversations. Parties can be really great, but group conversations can also be the most intimidating to participate in. Often they go quickly, there are multiple people speaking, often with background noise, and sometimes move on to another topic before we have time to jump in. Instead of looking for opportunities to speak English in groups, prioritize one-on-one conversations. These are usually easier and less stressful. Speaking English slows down. Having a conversation more slowly may make it easier for you to participate easily and help reduce your fear. One way to slow down the conversation is simply to ask your partner to speak more slowly. This often works, although it can be a bit uncomfortable. But there's another way to control the pace of the conversation. Change the pace of your own speech. If you want the conversation to go a bit slower, slow down your own speaking and rhythm. Your partner will naturally follow. It's not a race.
That is right. I have a friend who is a clinical psychologist. I've heard her explain that one of the most effective methods for treating phobias and anxiety is called exposure therapy. It basically works by systematically exposing people to their fear, little by little. Eventually, patients feel less and less fear. I'm not saying that you should seek psychological help for your fear of speaking English. nor am I saying that you should try to do psychotherapy on yourself. But I am saying that the more we do something, the less fear we have towards it. So perhaps my best advice to overcome the fear of speaking English is to speak it regularly. The more you speak in English, the more confident and comfortable speaking English will become for you.
If you're going to feel a bit silly speaking English, you just speak anyway. Probably the most consistent phenomenon that I've noticed in my years both teaching English and learning other languages is this. Most people feel a bit dumb speaking in another language. That discomfort is virtually universal. It's not just you. But try not to let that fear of feeling silly or of being clumsy in another language keep you from learning. Yes, you might feel a bit silly, but keep speaking anyway. Use the tips from this article to help you. Speaking is an essential part of any English practice. So try to overcome your fear of speaking and practice it like anything else. Even if you don't live in an English-speaking country. With consistent practice, your feelings of fear and embarrassment will disappear over time. And speaking in English will soon feel like second nature. Remember, you're learning English, you are trying, and you will make progress every time you practice.
That's a wonderful thing. And there is no reason you should be afraid of this fantastic journey that you are going on. Tommy, I know that you have some research about self-talk, right? Could you give ideas about that, please, and how it works?
Yes, Anna, does self-talk work? The other major reason to speak to yourself is that it could actually improve your English ability. I was surprised to find that there is actually quite a bit of academic research on talking to yourself to learn a language. There are two parts of speech, inner speech versus private speech. Researchers have distinguished between inner speech and private speech. Inner speech is the kind I usually use in the shower when I'm winning imaginary arguments. It's mental self-talk. It's thinking in words without saying them. It's silent speech that is directed at oneself. Private speech is the kind that we associate with crazy people. It's talking out loud but not to another person. It's audible speech but it's directed at oneself. The history of the study of both inner speech and private speech in language development is quite fascinating. If you're interested, I recommend this article, which provides an in-depth review. And the role of inner speech and private speech in language acquisition is that it turns out that both inner speech and private speech play a role in language acquisition. Research in both children and adults finds that private speech helps internalize new language learning. Inner speech is commonly used among adult language learners as a strategy to help them develop their language ability. Both private and inner speech seem to be an effective way to rehearse and remember new words and vocabulary. Language learners use inner speech and private speech even when we're learning in a classroom setting with others around them. Researchers suggest that private and inner speech are so important to language learners that teachers should intentionally make space to use them in language learning classrooms. For example, linguistic researchers have suggested that teachers integrate repetition and rehearsal into learning activities. Encourage their students to shadow and imitate the language they hear. Ask students to summarize what they hear to themselves. Together, the research seems to suggest that both inner speech and private speech are extremely important in the process of learning a new language. And it further suggests that most of us already do it. The conclusion for language teachers is to create opportunities for their students to use inner speech and private speech in class. And for independent English learners, the clear conclusion is that talking to yourself, out loud or just in your head, can be really helpful.
How difference between inner speech and private speech? Which one is better for self-talk?
I couldn't find any research that suggested that you should prefer one over the other. Both seem to be good for general speaking practice. However, I would say that you probably do need to speak out loud if you want to practice your pronunciation. Pronunciation requires a particular set of muscle movements and coordination between the mouth, throat, and vocal cords. Those are physical movements that you can practice and get better at. You're likely not going to improve those physical aspects of fluency as much if you're not speaking out loud. Besides that, though, the indication I got from the literature is that speaking to yourself, regardless of whether it's out loud or in your head, can be an effective way to practice English.
Thank you, Tommy, for your research about inner and private speech. So we are back to the ways to use self-talk to learn English basically. So how can you incorporate talking to yourself into your own English learning program? Here are a few ideas. Just talk to yourself. Whether you're in the shower or doing the dishes, have a little conversation with yourself in English. You can use inner speech or private speech. Just try to spontaneously use the language. For example, you might imagine you're in a restaurant and you're ordering food. You can play both parts, the guest and the server. Imagine you're giving a presentation at work on your most recent project. This may be especially helpful if you really have a presentation to give. Describe in detail what you're doing at the moment. Now I'm watering my herb garden. Here's the rosemary, here are the chives, and here is the basil. Each of these can be a great way to fit in some speaking practice as you're doing other things. I'm sure you can think of many more to add to this list.
Shadow native English speakers. We have a whole article on shadowing for learning English. It's a really effective exercise. It's actually a favorite activity. To do it, just listen to someone speaking English, preferably a native English speaker. Then repeat what they are saying as they're speaking so you sound almost like an echo. Part of the reason it's so great is that it helps you with the physical aspects of fluency by training your mouth and vocal organs to make English sounds. You also won't make any vocabulary or grammar mistakes because you're mimicking exactly what you hear. It's also a great way to practice connected speech. Read out loud. Reading is one of the best ways to get lots of English input. You can turn it into a speaking activity by simply reading out loud. You may be used to looking up words in a dictionary when you don't know what it means. When you're reading out loud, you can also look words up when you don't know how to pronounce them. Google Translate is a great tool for this.
Sing to yourself. Music can be a great way to learn English. Most of us love music, and there are so many artists that sing in English that you could explore forever. Singing out loud is a great way to enjoy music at the same time as practicing English. For an extra bonus practice, sing while reading the song's lyrics. Then, try to explain what the song is saying in your own words.
Record yourself speaking. My last piece of advice is to record yourself when you speak out loud. You don't have to record yourself all the time, but make an effort to record yourself at least once in a while. Recording yourself is great for a few reasons. The first reason is that it helps you identify the mistakes that you make in your English. It's much easier to hear them when you're listening back on yourself compared to when you're speaking in the moment. The second reason is that it's a great way to measure your progress in English. After a few months, you'll listen back on yourself and you'll see how much you've improved. There are a lot of benefits and advantages of self-talk we described, but let's talk about the disadvantages of self-talk as well. There are a couple of disadvantages of self-talk that you should be aware of. 1. Self-talk may compound errors. The first is that it's not easy to know if you're making a mistake in your self-talk. When you speak with a conversation partner and you make a mistake, they may tell you or they may not understand you. So it's easier to know when something is wrong. But there's no feedback like that when you're just talking to yourself. For that reason, it's good to find other ways to recognize the mistakes that you make most often and learn from them. Self-talk is not sufficient on its own.
Self-talk can absolutely help you become a better English speaker. But you can't just talk to yourself and get fluent in English. English is for communication. Make sure you are chatting with a real-life English conversation partner, too.
Self-talk is a great tool for the independent English learner. Like me, you may already engage in some forms of self-talk. It's a useful tool for us whether we're preparing to give an important presentation, getting ready for a difficult conversation with our partner, or just daydreaming about our first talk show experience. And it turns out that most language learners already use it when we're practicing a language. It's part of the learning process. So here, all I'm really suggesting is that you use it intentionally. Language teachers build self-talk activities into their lessons. If you're learning English on your own, you can do the same thing. Create opportunities for yourself to use self-talk to practice English. For utilization in technology, many apps offer speech recognition and provide feedback on pronunciation and fluency. Our favorite language learning apps to suggest are Babbel, Duolingo, Memrise, Busuu, Lingoda, Drops, Linguist, DuoCards, free. However, you could do research and compare which apps are suitable for you and easy to use. Self-talk learning via the apps is a very good way to practice speaking yourself. Language learning apps can be an effective tool for improving your language skills. But if you want to become fluent, you will likely need additional help. A Columbia University review of language apps identified 3 main weaknesses. First, apps tend to teach vocabulary in isolated units rather than in relevant contexts. Second, apps minimally adapt to suit the skill sets of individual learners. And third, apps rarely offer explanatory corrective feedback to learners. Every linguist agrees that human interaction is an essential part of learning a second language, so it's vital to look for language learning apps. That includes an option to listen to and talk to native speakers of your chosen language. It's also helpful when apps cover real-life scenarios, tell stories, and provide cultural context. Apps that focus on vocabulary building can help, but only alongside classes or other learning tools. There has been surprisingly little research on the efficacy of language learning apps. But a Michigan State University study found that our top pick, Babbel, didn't just facilitate grammar and vocabulary acquisition, but also improved oral communication skills. Language learning apps can help beginners and intermediate students to build a foundation. If you just want to learn enough to order a coffee, they can get you there. Fluency requires immersion and comprehension, whether through talking with native speakers, learning in a classroom, or reading books and watching movies.
In my opinion, the best overall is Babbel, right? If you're looking for a complete language learning package, Babbel is the way to go. It teaches the basics of grammar, including special vowels and consonants and their correct pronunciations, before moving on to conversational scenarios in common settings. I particularly like the conversations where you fill in the blanks, the option to choose courses on different topics, there's no fixed order, and the insights into local culture and slang. Babbel does a great job of explaining grammar rules as you practice to build a deeper understanding. The mixture of learning options includes podcasts and games, and you can even book live online classes with language teachers, though this is expensive. The pacing is good, with a slow increase in difficulty and plenty of spaced repetition to reinforce your learning. Unfortunately, the free trial is limited, offering just a single lesson for each language. Some lessons are dry, and it inevitably feels repetitive at times. There's no real gamification here, so it lacks the addictive hook of some other apps. I also occasionally had issues with speech recognition and could not nail the pronunciation.
In addition, the best free app in my opinion to suggest is Duolingo. Designing an addictive hook into your language practice is a clever way to keep you engaged. And Duolingo nails gamification like no other. It's easy to pick up, slick, and fun to use, and you will soon find yourself jealously guarding your daily streak. Each module is broken into topics, and the course is structured. So you must complete several lessons to unlock more. Modules cover social situations like dates or surprise parties. But they also tackle grammatical topics. Useful tips are scattered throughout, and there's a good mix of learning techniques with stories, puzzles, reminders, and explanations of common mistakes. Duolingo recently added a GPT-powered chatbot, but it requires the expensive Max subscription. While Duolingo has expanded beyond its focus on vocabulary building, adding podcasts and stories to the usual reading and writing exercises, it is still light on speaking and listening, and it won't teach you to be fluent on its own. The free tier offers a lot of great content, but you do have to endure ads. The gamification can also be stressful, as you are limited to 5 hearts each day. And you lose one when you get something wrong. You can ditch the limits and ads, and learn offline by subscribing to Duolingo Plus. There are also in-app purchases, but all the core content is free. For casual conversation, the learning app is Memrise. With a focus on vocabulary and the kinds of casual conversations you might have as a traveler, Memrise is a useful learning tool. The Android app is very accessible and uses a familiar flashcard approach with spaced repetition to help you memorize words and phrases. There are also grammar lessons and forgiving speech recognition exercises. What I like most are the learning with locals video clips, with native speakers, as this feels closer to the experience of being in the country. You can set goals, lessons are quick, and there's a bit of gamification and prodding to keep you coming back. You can also get a lot of value from the free version, and the basic courses are bolstered by user-generated content. While there is no substitute for talking to real people, MEMBot is a GPT-powered chatbot that allows you to practice your conversations without fear of embarrassment, but it requires a monthly subscription. On the downside, Memrise is very focused on vocabulary. The web app isn't as good as the mobile app, and the exercises can get repetitive. There isn't much in the way of explanation, and advanced learners should look elsewhere. If you delve into the user-created content, you will find the quality varies wildly. The free version gives you access to plenty, but you can unlock more features and offline access with a pro account.
For live classes, Lingoda app is suggested for you because it is good for speaking to real live people in the language you want to learn is the most effective way to improve for many people. Finding a class near you or the time to attend can be tricky, so Lingoda offers hour-long online Zoom classes with experienced language teachers. You can take classes in small groups of up to 5 people or pay extra for one-to-one learning. You must buy classes in blocks and you get downloadable materials to study to prepare for classes and practice what you learned afterward. You can take a test to find your level, sign up with different teachers, and find classes at times to suit you. Since there are classes in different time zones, they are available 24/7. The strength of Lingoda is the chance to speak with real people and get personalized feedback. Unfortunately, live classes are always going to be relatively expensive and might not suit shy folks. Some instructors are better than others, you can rate them after lessons, and so are some of your fellow students. You can learn a lot if you get a good instructor. There are only 1 or 2 other people, and everyone prepares properly. There's no app, but you will need Zoom and a decent internet connection. Lingoda only offers classes in English, Business English, French, Spanish, and German.
Engaging with English content by reading aloud. Choose articles, short stories, or poems and read them aloud, paying attention to pronunciation and fluency. Reading aloud is the ideal way of practicing if you're just starting out. When I do some spoken English practice, I'm very comfortable doing it. And so are other foreign English speakers who've been engaging in similar activities for a while. But what if you're just starting out? What if you've rarely had the chance to open your mouth and you just can't produce coherent speech no matter how hard you try? Well, let me try to remember how I did it. How I started engaging in spoken English practice. To be honest with you, it was so long ago that I can't actually remember much. I have a vague recollection of lying in a bed at night and trying to speak in English with myself to see how good I would be at it. It must have been more than 10 years ago at this stage. But anyway, if you want to do it but you don't know where to start, then
reading aloud is the ideal way of kickstarting your spoken English practicing routine. When you read aloud, you don't have to think about what you're going to say. You can focus on pronouncing the words and sentences instead. Think about the correctness of your speech. You can focus on getting the intonation right and making the speech flow. Worry about anyone thinking you're a weirdo if they catch you doing your spoken practice. After all, reading aloud is perfectly fine, right? So, you don't have to do it in bed at night. You can do it out in the open. Reading aloud guides your mouth in the right direction. Have you ever thought about the fact that you can learn English quite fast if you mimic native English speakers? Here's why it's very effective. You don't have to create English speech from scratch by sticking words together. You can repeat sentences and phrases that are used by others. It's the perfect shortcut, don't you agree? Now, hands down, the best way of mimicking is when you can hear someone else say something and then you repeat it. Watching a TV program or a video and repeating what the character says would be a good example of that. It's also a great method of acquiring native-like pronunciation.
When you read aloud, you can't really hear how those sentences and words are pronounced, so that's a drawback. But as far as mimicking native-like English sentence structures, reading aloud is perfect! Just think about it, someone else has done all the work for you by writing it all down. And all you have to do is open your mouth and train it to speak by repeating the same exact sentences that some other English speaker has created. What kind of material can be used for reading aloud? And here comes the best part. You can choose pretty much anything as a source for your spoken English practice if you decide to do some loud reading. English fiction, just make sure it's easy to read. English newspaper articles. Quite obviously, online news articles and other websites you find interesting. You can also write something yourself and then read it out loud. You can even read my blog articles out loud! There's only one thing you absolutely have to make sure of. You have to understand what you read, and it has to be written in an easy-to-read manner. Don't fall victim to the pitfall of choosing some sophisticated English text. You can barely understand thinking that it somehow is going to improve your English in a short space of time.
In reality, quite the opposite is going to happen. You're going to get confused and eventually, you'll end up hating the very concept of reading aloud. Just like I said, what you want is something that flows nicely when reading. But in case you're one of those perfectionists with very high standards, please watch this video where I'm talking about the fact that you have to lower them to stand a chance of achieving oral English fluency. On the finishing note, let me tell you that you don't have to go with some specific material created with the purpose of reading practice in mind. The key is probably to read out loud something you're actually interested in, something that excites you.
English learning tips and advantages of reading aloud. Do you like reading aloud? In a world driven by technological advancements, the art of reading aloud might seem old-fashioned. However, its significance in supporting English language learning is timeless. While some may only remember reading aloud as a classroom activity during childhood, the benefits of reading aloud extend far beyond and are advantageous for young learners and adult learners alike. In this post, we take a quick look at the advantages of students listening to someone reading out loud to them. Then, we focus on the benefits of English students reading aloud to develop their language skills. Do you remember your teachers reading aloud? The practice of a teacher reading aloud holds immense benefits for language learners. When a teacher reads out loud, students are immersed in the natural pronunciation and rhythm of the language. This auditory experience aids in the development of English pronunciation skills as students hear correct intonations and speech patterns modeled by the teacher. Additionally, it enhances listening comprehension, as students are exposed to varied accents, tones, and pacing. The teacher reading aloud also serves as a powerful modeling tool for proper grammar, sentence structure, and vocabulary usage. Together, a teacher's reading fosters engagement and enthusiasm for the language, making English learning more enjoyable and memorable.
How can reading aloud help language learning? Reading aloud is a powerful tool for developing English language skills. We explored the advantages of adding reading aloud to the learning strategies of English language students, both for young learners and adults.
Here are 6 advantages of English learners reading aloud. 1. Improves pronunciation and articulation. When you read aloud, you engage in active pronunciation training. It enables English learners to practice the correct pronunciation of words and articulate sounds, and to develop clarity and accuracy in spoken English. 2. Enhances vocabulary and word recognition. Reading aloud exposes you to a wide range of English vocabulary and context. This helps you learn new words, understand their meanings, and observe how they are used in sentences. Over time, your vocabulary expands, allowing you to express yourself more precisely and fluently. 3. Reinforces grammar and sentence structure. At the same time, reading aloud familiarizes you with different examples of grammar and sentence structures. You internalize the correct way sentences are formed, which helps you construct grammatically accurate sentences when speaking and writing in English. This reinforcement is a valuable tool to develop communication skills. 4. Develops fluency and rhythm. Regular practice of reading aloud contributes to the development of natural fluency and rhythm in spoken English. It helps you practice speaking at a natural pace, allowing you to speak without hesitation. As you become more fluent, your conversations in English become more effortless and enjoyable. 5. Boosts listening and reading skills. Reading aloud combines the practice of speaking, reading, and listening. Reading and speaking together speeds up your ability to recognize words, comprehend sentence structures, and grasp the overall meaning of the text. And by reading out loud, you develop your listening skills, intonation, and speech patterns. Together, this combined approach requires you to read smoothly in real time without stopping. This encourages you to develop a more natural and intuitive speaking rhythm. 6. Builds confidence in communication. Regular practice of reading aloud boosts your confidence in speaking English, making this one of the biggest advantages for language learners. As you become more comfortable pronouncing words and expressing ideas, you feel more self-assured during conversations. Confidence is key to overcoming language barriers and engaging in wide variety of dialogues with English speakers.
Who should English learners read aloud to? Language learners can benefit from reading aloud to various audiences. Whether practicing alone, with peers, or with native speakers, the key is consistent and purposeful engagement in reading aloud to enhance language skills. Possible audiences include: First, read to yourself. This solo exercise has no external pressure and is a good starting point. Second, reading to friends or parents. Testing your reading skills with friends or family is another option to develop your skills in a comfortable environment. Third, your English language trainer. This is an excellent route to receive regular feedback and correction. Language teachers can incorporate this activity into your learning program to support your studies. Fourth, classmates or study groups. Reading to other language learners gives a valuable opportunity to practice with peers and boost your confidence. Fifth, reading to children. Reading short children's stories or nursery rhymes out loud to young children provides you with a small group of enthusiastic listeners. This can be an excellent way to start practicing, and you don't have to worry about making mistakes.
Recommendations for reading texts. Reading aloud can be practiced with a wide variety of texts, catering to the diverse interests and proficiency levels of both adults and young learners. Here are examples of different types of text suitable for reading aloud to develop English language skills. For young learners and adults, picture books with vibrant illustrations and simple sentences are perfect for young learners. These books often include repetitive phrases and engaging stories, making them ideal for practicing pronunciation and intonation. Phonics books focus on letter sounds and phonetic patterns. They help young learners to practice reading words aloud, improving their phonetic awareness and pronunciation skills. Fairy tales provide captivating stories that engage young learners. They enhance vocabulary and comprehension. If you already know the story in your native language, you can focus less on comprehension and more on natural pronunciation. Poetry and nursery rhymes help young learners to practice intonation, rhythm, and expression, while fostering a love for language creativity. Graded readers come in different difficulty levels, allowing young readers to progress at their own pace. These books offer age-appropriate content with controlled vocabulary to support reading fluency. Check out some graded readers options for all age groups.
For adults, English children's books can be great for adults too, and you don't need to find books that were written for language learners. There are more options available, and you can choose books by age group or level of difficulty. Short stories provide a compact yet complete narrative experience. They often explore diverse themes and genres, enhancing vocabulary and comprehension. News articles expose readers to current events, diverse topics, and various writing styles. It improves vocabulary related to current affairs and enhances pronunciation and listening skills. Novels offer immersive storytelling adventures and complex characters. Reading English novels is more challenging, but can also provide the most immersive and enjoyable reading experience.
Here are the tips for reading aloud. Tip 1. Try reading texts that have audiobooks or podcasts. You can read aloud yourself and then listen to sections of the text for an accurate model. Tip 2. Try recording your own voice and listening to yourself speaking. You can also combine this with Tip 1 and compare your speaking with a recording by a native speaker. Furthermore, don't forget to engage with English music. Sing along to English songs, paying attention to the lyrics, and trying to understand the meaning. Create a consistent routine. Dedicate time. Set aside specific times each day for English speaking practice. Find a comfortable space. Find a quiet place where you can speak freely without distractions. Be patient and persistent. Consistent practice is key to improving your fluency. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results immediately. Okay, finally we're gonna be finishing the talk for today. I want to tell you to start with short sentences and gradually build vocabulary. Speak and read aloud every day. Make a timetable and stick to it no matter how busy you are. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. I still make mistakes and learn from them. Practice is the key. However, don't forget to subscribe, like our videos, and drop a comment to share your thoughts or ask any questions. And of course, feel free to share our content with your friends so they can learn too. Let's stay connected and keep growing together. I am Tommy Chio. Bye-bye for today.
I am Anna. Have a good day. See you next episode. Bye.